Gafurov versus Routolo, one championship this Friday, Amazon Prime. Guys, let me ask you a question, okay? I know there's an arrogance in inserting myself, but let me just ask you a question. If you imagined I was in a room with Khabib, and there's a small room, 4 or 5 guys, who do you think would do most of the talking? I mean, when you think of me, do you think of, he talks a lot? I think that you do. When you think of Khabib, do you think that he talks a lot? I think that you don't. I think that I will share with you, when I'm in those circles with Khabib, I'm doing a lot more listening than talking, and it's extremely interesting because it always turns into a fight every single time. No matter what it turns into a fight between Khabib and Henry Cejudo about grappling, where Henry, as Olympic champion, is proclaiming the hardest and the most difficult and the best athletes, so on and so forth, in grappling come from wrestling, and you have Khabib, who's from Dagestan, which is the most wrestling-rich region on earth, disagreeing to his face, putting wrestling at number 3. Does that surprise you? Number 3, yeah, Khabib puts judo in front of it, puts Sambo as number 1. And it always turns into a thing. And I think you guys can imagine that. In 1993 in Mobile, Alabama, when they set that octagon up for the very first time, that's what we were promised. That was from a marketing standpoint largely, but it's still what we were promised. They're going to put different arts together. They're going to mix the arts and find out who is the best. Now, here's one thing that you have to do. And it's what the real trick is you have to have the representative that community wants representing them. How the heck do you do that? We couldn't do that here in America. If we had to put somebody forward, people are going to come to the table and go, obviously, Jordan Burroughs, put him forward. But you're going to have other people go, whoa, Kyle Dake. It's going to be a fight. So then you're going to put Burroughs and Dake on the mat against each other. Well, Burroughs is going to beat him, but then Dake's going to come back and beat him, and then Dake's going to get it. It's really hard to do, right? It's just really hard to find that one representative. One championship is bound and determined through grappling to retest what I feel was never settled in 1993. In 1993, this skinny guy at 178 pounds that can wear out 3 men in one night named Royce Gracie proves to the world that Jiu-Jitsu is dominant. You better learn how to do it. You better learn how to say it. You better get used to hearing it. And then in 1994 came a great big guy out of Arizona named Dan Severn. And Dan didn't know any of these tricky moves, and he didn't understand a guard. And he didn't know what a Uma Palata was, but he could get on top, and he could square his hips, and he could keep you there. All of a sudden, the debate is back on. Well, how well did wrestling do? Ultimately, they lost, but wrestling got spotted 40 pounds. On the other hand of it, this guy had all this experience, and this guy with the mustache out of Arizona did it right, like it lived on. So one championship through Tye Routolo is going to bring Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, bring the finest in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And that's going to be a statement, much like Dake and Burroughs. You're going to get, it's this guy. But we all do agree that's a damn good representative, right? We all do agree. Here's what I want to know, and I want somebody to step forward and tell me. It's not a matter of resumes. It's not a matter of anything other than a community leader saying yes or saying no. Is this the representative that Sambo, Russia, and Dagestan chooses to put forward in grappling? Yes or no? I got to hear that. I've got to hear that because and I've watched Khabib and Henry, and I watch them go back and forth, and I'm always so interested, and I love when Henry defends wrestling. He's got these really good points, but Khabib will bring stories up. He'll say, I've been in the practice room with Olympic freestyle wrestlers and Olympic judoka and national Sambo. And he comes to his opinion. He comes to his 3, Sambo, judo, wrestling. That's a lot. That's a very interesting task. And I want to talk about when you're talking about Routolo, because ultimately, if you are looking for a really good art for grappling, you really are imagining with the strikes added what would carry over to MMA. And that becomes tricky to do, right? Is it submission versus position? Like this debate has gone on for a meaningful period of time. But Routolo's opponent is a former world champion. Oh, excuse me. He's a former 2-time world champion. I count interim championships. He won them both in MMA. He's going back down to grappling. So this isn't somebody that's in the room thinking that eventually their art is going to be able to carry over. This is somebody whose art has carried over. Excuse me, he's already got the belt. 2 of them. It makes things very interesting. And as I look into it, I want to know what he's representing. Is he representing judo? I know of him because I'm a wrestler. Now, he only went to, it was to junior level, but then he goes over to Sambo. I want to know what he's representing. And it gets very tough. I wish that this was discussed in sports more often, but it's not. There are some extremely powerful countries in this world that believe, and I believe accurately so, they believe the strength of their country is demonstrated not on the battlefield, not when you roll in the tanks and the airplanes. They believe before they ever get to that, they can show you through sport who has the tactical training and the superiority. I bring you that because Russia is one of them that views that. They don't just let somebody go over to one championship and represent them. It doesn't work that way. I think that's fascinating. Wei Li, when she comes over from China, I think the government will go in and assess her before she's issued a passport and can leave. I think that's fascinating. They will believe that their athlete, they won't guarantee they can bring home the gold medal, but they will have somebody within the government that believes they can bring home the medal. And Russia is going to send a judo, wrestling, and sambo specialist who's a former mixed champion to take on Routolo. It's a really big deal. And I don't feel that this debate is handled. I can remember the last time we got close when the other Routolo took on a Sambo expert. Routolo caught him in a heel hook and we're done. Okay, that was Friday night. Sounds like we've solved the problem. Sounds like we've got everything we need to know. Jiu-Jitsu is superior to Sambo. The very next day, this was tested again in the form of Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev. Same result in that it was a finish, but it went the other way. That weekend, 1 month ago, Sambo versus Jiu-Jitsu, they split. They went 1-1. It's going to be tested again this Friday.